The right to life. It's a critical issue. It's one of the most fundamental civil rights, and yet it is pending right now before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in a very important case, not dealing with the unborn, but dealing with people who are alive, toddlers who are alive, who are having their life support taken from them. We're going to talk about that in the second part of the show. But in the first part of the show, I want to talk about something big picture, dealing with a change in attitudes that could impact religious freedom for so many people, specifically with regards to the attitudes of Protestant pastors and clergy when it comes to the topic of religious freedom. You're going to find this very surprising. We have with us right now on the line Roxanne Stone. She's the editor-in-chief of the Barna Group. Roxanne, thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, Roxanne, you guys did a study recently there at the Barna Group that I frankly was surprised about, because we at Pacific Justice Institute are defending religious freedom. We've had a more than tripling of our cases over the last few years. We have over 40 cases in active litigation. We help hundreds and hundreds across the country on issues dealing with religious freedom, along with parental rights, sanctity of human life. And yet I discovered through this study that you did that pastors, Protestant pastors, a lot of evangelical pastors, are of the opinion now that religious freedom is not that important. Their concern for it is actually decreasing. Explain what's going on here.
That's right. This study is actually one we've conducted almost every year for about 5 years now. So the first one that we did was in 2014, and then we kind of re-asked these questions to clergy of all faiths each year, or about each year since then. And what we've seen, as you said, is a little bit surprising. In 2014, when we first did the study, Protestant pastors, really clergy of all faiths, but Protestant pastors included, were very concerned that threats to religious freedom were on the rise, and that they would continue to grow over the next 5 to 10 years. And then we saw sort of a shift happen in our 2015 and 2016 study, where clergy of other faiths continued to be concerned about the threat to religious freedom, and so did mainline pastors, but Protestant pastors were a group where that concern was beginning to diminish.
Why is that, do you think? I mean, why Protestant pastors are having less concern while, say, Catholic pastors or Orthodox pastors have greater concern? Why do you see this disparity? What's going on? Do you have any idea on that?
Yeah, there's several factors that we talk about in the report, Faith Leadership in a Divided Culture, which is the name of the report that goes through these 5 years of studies. And one of the main things that really we know happened in 2016 was a shift in the president, and shift in the party that from Democrat to Republican. And a lot of Protestants see Donald Trump, President Trump, as a friend to evangelicals and a friend to religious freedom and to a lot of the battles that they've been fighting in courts. Particularly, you're talking about the abortion, and we've seen President Trump be friendly toward that and appoint justices to the Supreme Court that are more conservative, and that Protestant pastors see as allies in some of these religious freedom debates. So we certainly think that that's one of the reasons. We were surprised by it, though, because, as you said, really there's been a lot of public battles over religious freedom in the last couple of years, and those have had a lot of headlines. They've been very public, and so in some ways we expected a headline sensitivity to that, to see for pastors to see, these are actually real debates, real lawsuits, real threats to universities, to business owners. So that's, we were surprised by that.
Right, because there's actual cases out there where we're dealing with real people being attacked in unprecedented ways. And we at Pacific Justice Institute, we try to keep people updated through our legal insider that people can subscribe to on our website, pgi.org. But reality is most people, I think they have this impression that because the president has been appointing excellent judges that respect religious freedom, and he also, I know, went ahead and via executive order halted the enforcement of the Johnson Amendment, which limited and restricted what pastors could say behind the pulpit. So they probably feel a little more secure now so that they can't be attacked by the IRS because of what they preach or what they say, what may be potentially political but yet biblical in nature. So I sort of understand that. But, at the same time, though, I tell you, we see so many attacks that are taking place. I know, like in California, there's so much going on regarding sex education that's being pushed down now in our public schools. I was just guest preaching at a church last Sunday where the pastor, God bless him, he went up before I even got up to spoke. He said, "I want to tell you what's happening in our public schools. This is the new curriculum. This is the new radical sex ed material, graphic, obscene material that your children be exposed to, and we need to stand up for it." I was so encouraged, and yet the reality is many pastors are sort of more sitting back and just thinking, well, we got the Johnson Amendment sort of, for now held back. The president's appointing fantastic justices, respecting religious freedom, but they don't seem to get what's actually taking place. You mentioned, like in the terms of business owners, in the schools, in public places, we have more street preachers we're representing now than ever before. We're being criminally prosecuted. So it is sort of a weird dichotomy. I just think, do you think a lot of it may be the need for pastors to be updated, perhaps to receive updates from sources that they're not getting from mainline media that are really focusing on religious freedom?
Yeah, it's possible. They're just, the study did show that pastors express interest and curiosity about learning more when it comes to religious freedom. They believe, all clergy believe that the vast majority of them believe that clergy should play a special role in protecting religious freedom, more so than lay people. So they do believe that they have a role. Many of them feel uninformed, and they say they were willing to learn more. 77% of clergy said they would be willing to work with other clergy, even outside of their specific faith, to protect religious freedom. So I think there's a desire there, and there is a curiosity. But yeah, I think you're right. There's just, in some ways, it feels maybe a little more buried in the news than it was for a while. But also, as you said, I think there is just a little bit of a feeling of, okay, we're protected right now. Things are better than they were, which is less true for people of other faiths who feel actually less protected than they did under the former president and former laws. So that's, I think Christians might feel a little okay right now, but the threats are still real across the board in terms of religious liberty. And I think, one of the things that we found in the study over and over is that religious freedom just isn't a top priority for pastors. When we ask them to rank some of the things that they're most concerned about, they're pastors. They're concerned about their local congregations. They're concerned about young people dropping out of church. That's the main concern that they have. They're very concerned about sort of eroding morality.
Yeah, Roxanne, I think that's a real important point, because the reality is that if children are indoctrinated by because of liberal legislation to be exposed to radical LGBTQ material in the kindergarten all the way down through elementary schools, these kids are not going to be going to church. If they're indoctrinated to believe that what their parents believe is bigoted, hate-filled, that the Bible is a bigoted document, they're not going to go to church when they leave home. Those churches are going to shrink. The tithing is going to shrink. I hate to be so, direct, but pastors, just even from just a selfish perspective, much less a spiritual perspective, should be engaged and understand there is a price that churches are going to pay, not just for the kingdom, but actually for their direct welfare. So it's very disturbing to hear that. And one thing that we have as a resource, Roxanne, that I think could be very helpful to many pastors out there, it's a booklet called Church and Politics. They can download it for free straight from our website, pji.org, and it actually informs and updates them on what they can do to play an active role in their community, including voter registration. There is no reason, in my opinion, why every church in America should have voter registration at their church and made available. If a church is truly filled with the love of Christ, then they're going to care about people outside their church walls. And folks, if a church truly cares about people outside their church walls, then they're going to vote. It's not about results. It's not about impact. It's about the reality of the love of Christ and the reality and authenticity of our testimony and preserving that testimony and that messaging. So folks, I encourage you strongly, take advantage of this resource. Once again, that's Church and Politics. You can download it for free straight from our resource straight from our website, pji.org under resources, pji.org. Roxanne, thank you so much for the work that you're doing there at the George Barna Group, and keep it up as we stay enlightened to the needs of the Christian community and the pastors throughout America.
Sure, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
You're kind of wired as a mom to protect your kid. And when you're unable to, that's scary. The school pretty much told us, your daughter has no rights.
Well, it kind of makes me a little bit nervous about, like, if I run into him.
I felt uncomfortable because I know that he doesn't have the same parts as me, which I do not think that's right, that he could go into the same bathroom as me.
When the school told me there's no rights, I was like, there has to be rights for these girls.
This Colorado high school decided to allow a boy who has gender identity disorders, and we recognize that. They allowed him to start using the girls' bathrooms, the girls' locker rooms, to give him the full access to the facilities that are normally just for girls.
I believe if you want to be gay or a girl, if you're a guy, you have the right to do that, but you don't need to put everyone else in a position to where they're uncomfortable to do that.
I was going into the bathroom. I sat there, I was just walking in, and I see him there, and I just turned around and walked out of the bathroom.
I actually only use the bathroom probably once a day, and that's when I'm in gym, and I don't have the same gym class with him, so I'm trusting that he won't walk in there while I'm in there.
Things are meant to be private and kept for you and only for you.
You have private parts for a reason, and now they're not private anymore.
My first time running into the boy in the locker room, or bathroom, was is like 2 months ago, and me and my friend were in there, and all of a sudden we see him walk out of the stall, and then I felt really weird, and we just walked out.
I just don't go to the bathroom as much anymore.
After investigating this matter, we at Pacific Justice Institute did not hesitate to contact the school and, in writing, make it very clear that they were violating the rights of these young people, violating the rights of parents, and that they needed to change their policies immediately.
From day one, you protect your kid from the electrical outlets. You put things on your cabinet so they can't get into the medicine. It's your job to protect your kid because they can't protect themselves yet.
I feel sorry for this little boy, but at the same time, I need to respect him. He needs to respect me. And I do that. Why can't he do it? Why can't we teach him, respect others?
We pray for this boy every night, which is You know, as a family, we decided we're going to pray for this boy, and you know, he's a confused boy.
You know, this is not the school's problem or my daughter's problem that he has decided to do this, but it is my problem when they're uncomfortable and not safe at school. I feel as if they're not safe at all.
Make no mistake, these young teenage girls have gone through a lot mentally and emotionally as a result of this whole ordeal. We're hoping that at the end of the day, this school district will apologize to these young girls and at the same time amend their policies so that in the future, no young girl or young boy for that matter will ever have to worry about having their privacy or modesty violated when they're using a bathroom or a locker room in the future.
And folks, if you'd like to support the work of the Pacific Justice Institute, it's easy to do. Just go to our website. It's pacificjustice.org, or even shorter version is pji.org. P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org. And there you can also sign up to get our Legal Insider newsletter. Folks, this is really helpful. It's just comes out once a week via email. It's short, it's to the point, and you'll have inside information about what's going on, what's happening, and what you can do about it, and specifically how you can pray about it. So go to our website. If you'd like to support our work, it's easy to do. Just go to pji.org. Your support is completely tax deductible. We're a nonprofit 501c3 legal ministry, and we greatly appreciate your support. We don't get money from the government. We don't get support from the Soros Foundation. We get it from moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, and about 140 plus churches that see the work and want to become a part of what we're doing and not just be hearers of it, but actually be a participant in what we're actually doing to help so many. So once again, it's pji.org. Thank you so much for those of you who respond to the call to support our work. Now, we have with us on the line one of our attorneys, Matt McRenolds, who's involved in a very, very important case. This is a case dealing with life and death, literally, life and death. And that is the extent to which the government can allow a doctor to take the life of someone on life support, perhaps a little toddler, without parental consent, without even the opportunity for parents to get a second opinion from an outside neurologist that doesn't have perhaps a financial interest that doctor or that hospital might have. We have a very, very important case that's gone before the Ninth Circuit. For a very important update, I'd like to talk to, for a very important and timely update, I'd like now to talk to Matt McRenolds. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Brad. Always a pleasure.
Now, Matt, first give us a recap of this case so people understand the depth and gravity of what we're talking about.
Sure. Well, Brad, this was just a horrible situation that came to us just a few years ago with this desperate family whose toddler had gone on life support in a local hospital here in Northern California, and the hospital wanted to turn off life support even though the family could still see signs of life, and they were being told by other doctors that their toddler still had a chance to recovery. So when they tried to fight for him, we came alongside them, and we began to fight for them as well.
Yeah, I understand that when the mother would speak, the little toddler would squeeze her finger. That doesn't sound like someone who's dead. That sounds like there's some interaction there. There's some neurological action, and there was, I know, an outside neurologist that came in and weighed in on the side that this child should not be terminated or killed by removing life support. What happened next?
Well, Brett, after we got involved, we were able to prevent the termination of life support until the family could move their child to a facility outside of the United States. And believe it or not, Brad, outside the U.S., they actually were willing to do more testing that showed more brain activity and more possibility of recovery than the family was able to get here in California. And so they were able to access that for a number of weeks, and then they made a fateful decision to bring him back to the United States. They had heard that he could be treated at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. They understood that he would have a better chance to recover there. And when they brought him back, Brad, unfortunately, they ran into the same kind of situation again. And this time, we found out about it too late, and life support was turned off as the mother was literally held back and watched her child die at the hands of the hospital.
Yeah, this is such an important case, and people may not realize this, but we've actually had some successes and victories along these lines before, where they were going to take the life support from this little toddler. We went into court, we got the protection needed to save the life of this little one. That little one is now at Stanford Medical, last reported receiving fantastic therapy treatment, making progress. But this little one turned out differently. And the reason is because we now have a system where we have hospitals that I think under the guise of economic efficiency, possibly partially the result of Obamacare, in my personal opinion, we have them making decisions about life and death that in the past we didn't have to worry about. And yet we see lives now being lost because of this. Matt, what happened as we move forward? We didn't just let this thing die, literally. I mean, we stepped in and are now litigating. Where are we at?
Absolutely, Brad. Well, the family wanted to keep fighting so that similar situations don't happen to other families in that situation. And so what we determined to do was to attack the statutory scheme that allowed all of this to transpire. And the hospital and the providers, Brad, pointed back to the state and said they believe they were under an obligation to do what they did with this child. So we went after the constitutionality of this state statute, which is actually very similar to statutes and laws in most other states as well. Wherever our listeners may be, you have similar statutes in your jurisdiction. And so we went after that. But Brad, when we got to federal district court, the federal court dismissed the case because she said there were no constitutional issues presented by this decision to turn off life support. If you can imagine that, deprivation of life, the highest fundamental right you can think of, no constitutional right, no parental right. And so that's why we took it up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals earlier this year. We argued that case down at the Ninth Circuit, and the question we put to them was, surely doctors and hospitals don't have broad discretion to end life support without there being a major constitutional issue. And that's what they're wrestling with right now.
Right. Now, I want people to understand, so most states across the country will allow a doctor, a hospital, to take the life of someone on life support, to declare them, quote, brain dead, and not give parents the opportunity to have an alternative opinion, a second opinion, to validate the fact that their loved one is, in fact, quote, brain dead. That is the status quo that we have in most states across the country?
It's just amazing, Brad. There are a few exceptions. Places like New Jersey is one where there are a little better protections, but still far from everything that needs to be in place to protect not only an individual's rights, but the family's rights, and in this case, the parents' rights. So that's what we're fighting for, and that's what brings us to the latest twist in this saga.
Now, why is this case significant beyond what we've just stated? I want people to understand the breadth of what we're talking about.
Sure. Well, Brad, when we first got to the Ninth Circuit, we were there on a jurisdictional question, and the question was whether or not parents have standing to even bring a case like this forward. Now, what's happened most recently is that the Ninth Circuit has asked for additional briefing on the key questions of the merits, questions about deprivation of life and the right to life, questions about the parental rights here that weren't even actually addressed by the lower court. And so the Ninth Circuit, Brad, is just one of, for better or often for worse, one of the most influential federal courts in the land. It covers so much territory in so many of the western states that what it says gets attention all across the country and has huge ramifications.
Yeah, I mean, the Ninth Circuit covers about 20% of the population, about 40% of the landmass of the United States. It's very influential, very controversial oftentimes. But this is very significant because the Ninth Circuit looked at this and is now saying, whoa, we have some very basic issues here dealing with the right to life and also parental rights over their children to prevent their child from just simply being killed by a doctor, unilaterally by a doctor in a hospital without having any say in the matter, without having any opportunity to have a third opinion. This is very important, particularly as we see more and more hospitals, because of the mandates that are on them and the tribunals and the things that have been facilitated because of Obamacare. They're often making decisions about life that instead these decisions should be made by parents, by loved ones who have an opportunity to get all the information. And we've caught them. We've caught them more than once trying to take the life of someone who is not brain dead. So this isn't just a hypothetical. This is a reality. And we have this one fatality in particular that is now the foundation of this very, very important case. I think, frankly, one of the most important cases dealing with the rights of parents. Parents have a fundamental right over the education of their children, the disciplining of the children, the upbringing of their children. Well, by golly, they also have the right to be able to save the life of their child when we see statutes by states like California around the country giving doctors the ability to trump that and just unilaterally take the life of a precious child or a senior citizen who is struggling for life as well. So this is very, very important. Matt, keep up the great work. You did a fantastic job arguing this case before the Ninth Circuit. I saw it myself. I was very, very impressed. Folks, pray for Matt. Pray for the work of the Pacific Justice Institute as we move ahead in other cases like this in the future. Matt, thank you once again.
Thanks, Brad.
So, folks, there you have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus, president of the Pacific Justice Institute. Have a good week.